Ladies and gentlemen, James Purpura is about to come on and just blow your mind. This dude has dove into the science, the psychology, and the being of how do we really transform? How do we shift our perspective? How do we evolve into our greatest possible self? So definitely stay tuned. It's going to be a powerful interview. Before that, I'm talking to you because you're becoming your greatest possible self. You are here today. You're diving into this interview. You're showing up. You're doing your habits. You're doing the things. You're doing all the things that you know to do. And some of the things that maybe you know to do, you're not doing. That's okay. Don't beat yourself up. But stay connected with people like James, who's about to come on, and keep growing yourself. Stay plugged into the sources of transformation, inspiration, and every day commit to being and becoming your greatest possible self. Thank you for being here. Next up is the iTunes review of the week. This week, let's see who it's by. I believe it's by M. Davis 777. Who said, very inspirational and educational. This is the podcast to listen to if you're looking for both inspiration and education on a variety of topics to help you be the best you can be. Absolutely we are. Thank you so much, M. Davis. If you want a chance to get shouted out on a future 12-hour live stream marathon and the podcast, go to bogps.com/iTunes or search Greatest Possible Self on the Apple Podcast Store. Give us a review. Let us know what you love, what you want to see more of, how we can improve the show for you. While you're there, subscribe so you never miss an episode because we release a new one every day to keep you fueled and filled up with inspiration and empowerment to become your greatest possible self. Thank you for being here. Let's keep growing and going. I'm going to introduce James in just a sec. Before that, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, be ready to take notes. This is going to be a powerful, powerful interview. And make sure you stick around all the way through to the end because one idea, one perception shift has the power to change everything for you. Our guest today has experienced some of the most extreme moments life can offer. 15 years ago, he was an inmate struggling with life in solitary confinement, placed there as a result of his actions while homeless and addicted to drugs. While in jail, he reconciled his life and developed a personal philosophy. And once released, he found his wife. He created an amazing family and a beautiful, prosperous life. He became inspired to share his knowledge with the world. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And we're going to see how he's sharing his knowledge with the world in this interview. James, are you ready to rock the house? I know you already said yes, but I'm just double confirming.
I am ready. I heard your intro. I think you said it was inspiration and perspiration. I'm down.
Yes.
Right? Let's do a hair check first. Are we good here? Everything?
Me too.
Well, that's why I did it, right? No, I think that's amazing. And one of the things you said as we were coming in, you said something like you're doing all the things. Well, maybe that's true for some people. Maybe it's not true for other people. And so I think that's a great lead in. You just let me know when you want me to unleash.
Dude, we're unleashing. We're unleashing. I'm gonna create a segue. The theme of today is patterns of transformation. So do your magic. Weave what you're weaving into patterns of transformation just to kick it off.
Okay, so I'm going to give everybody an idea or a concept. There's a couple I'll share with you today. But the first one is either do the work or change your goal. Right? Meaning there's no shame in it. And so what I mean by that is that so many of us have what I would call these subconscious, unconscious goals. Like we have all these priorities or ideas of how we want to change our lives. And the problem is that we never take the time to get clarity around the things that we want. And when you don't get clarity, what happens is you wake up in the morning and you've got a list of 1,000 priorities, right? It's like, well, today I'm going to eat better. I'm going to work out. I'm going to go to the gym. Whatever it is, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, well, what happens when you fail to fulfill those priorities, right? Is that you start beating yourself up, So it's like, today is the day I'm going to eat healthy. And then you come along and somebody sets a birthday donut on your desk and you're like, it's not today, maybe tomorrow. And that narrative plays out in our head. Why is that important? And here's why it's important is because we don't get clarity around our goals, we have all of these objectives that we want to cover in a day, which we could never do anyway. Yep. But every time we fail to do one of those things, we beat ourselves up. And so what I like to tell people is like, either do the work or change your goal. There's no shame in it, right? Like, because when you don't do it, then you create guilt. Yep. And then you create shame. And that's what suffering is. Suffering is the idea of focusing on the problems. And so you only get so much energy in every given day. And we waste our energy by not having clarity around the things that we want. And so what I tell people as a starting point, if you want to change your life, is make a list and get super clear around the things that you want in your life. And then take one thing off your list. And why is that important? Is because just accomplishing one thing, it's like, well, but then I'll never get to where I want because I want all these things. It's like, you're never going to get to where you want because you're trying to do all the things at once instead of doing one thing. And so it's like, once that one thing is habitualized, then you can take on another thing. But here's the key to that, is you have to give yourself permission not to do the other things. And so if it's like, I'm going to take on healthy eating. And so I'm going to set my goal of going to the gym to the side. I'm going to set my goal of meditating to the side. I'm just going to take on this one thing. And once I've habitualized that one thing, and once I've implemented that one thing in my life, I pull another thing off my list. But if I don't do it that way, it's like, okay, well, I start healthy eating, and then I fail to go to the gym. And then I fail to meditate. And then I fail to do all these other things. And I cause this situation where I'm constantly beating myself up, and I make that one thing harder. So it seems like it's going to take forever, but in truth, do one thing, do another thing, do another thing, and over a year period of time, you'll be blown away by how much change you'll have in your life.
Dude, I love it. So I hear that a transformational pattern to adopt is not trying to do everything at once, but one thing at a time. And so if people are not feeling like they're transforming in their life at the capacity that they know they're capable of, it's like, man, I know I should be doing better. I should have better relationships, should have the woman or man of my dreams. I should have a business of my dreams, finances, whatever. And they're shooting all over themselves. They're beating themselves up. They have guilt. They have shame. Then most likely they're not taking on one thing at a time or facing the reality, confronting whatever is uncomfortable about that one thing.
Right. I mean, when you try to do everything, you end up doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, start with one. And here's the thing, guys, what you have to understand is that you're expanding your capacity for risk. Right. So when you think about change and what creativity is and what change is, it's about taking on that which is uncertain. Right. And so you do have a capacity for uncertainty. Right. And when you start out, it's actually pretty low. And so what I call creativity is moving into uncertainty and that making that which is uncertain certain. Now, uncertainty, our mind is literally programmed to move towards certainty at all times. Now, when we have a problem, right, or when we have an issue that we have to address, we've now moved into uncertainty. And so there's only two options. We have to move our mind towards certainty. That's the way your mind works. But you can do that one of two ways. You can solve the problem, or you can lie to yourself, right? And that's what cognitive dissonance is. Cognitive dissonance is that you hold two opposing ideas in your mind at the same time. And so you're splintering yourself off into 1,000 pieces because it's like, I don't want to sit in this uncertainty anymore. I don't want to take on the risk of solving the problem. So I'll just lie to myself and tell myself it's okay. And that's why people are so surprised by the results. What I say to people often is like, stop being surprised by the results. Your results, right? Meaning that, everything in your life is a consequence of how you've been living. And it's, people are so shocked. It's like, I'm just going to use this as an example. If anybody's in this situation, I feel bad. I'm going to say sorry up front, but it's like, okay, well, you eat badly, you smoke, you drink massive amounts, and then one day you get cancer or heart disease, right? And then it's like, why me? Why did it happen? And you're like, what did you think was going to happen? Right? It's because you have patterns in your life. Your life is made up of patterns. And so here's how I would say is like, you have a relationship pattern, you have a money pattern, you have a work pattern, you have a health and fitness pattern. And without interruption, those patterns are going to play themselves all the way out. And so people are like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. Well, actually, you do know what's going to happen because it's simple math. So what you do is that you look at all the patterns in your life and you do very simple math. It's like, okay, well, let's look at your weight, for instance, right? Are you heavier? Are you healthy or less healthy than you were this time last year? Are you heavier or skinnier than you were at this time last year? Push that number. How much? Well, I'm 10 pounds heavier this year than I was this time last year. Well, push that 10 pounds in the future plus interest. That means you're going to be 20 pounds heavier this time next year. Because people think that change is about act of God change. right? But it really isn't. It's just patterns playing out in your life. And so you need to have clarity and insight into where your patterns are currently going. You know, are you more in debt or less in debt? How much? It's super easy math. And it's like, then you don't have to be shocked by your circumstances.
Dude, James, this is gold, man. This is gold. We're just hitting home runs right off the bat. I want to connect people with your story. I watched the documentaries, freaking powerful, man, and had a chance to glance over your book. It's just awesome stuff that's in there. For everyone who's just getting connected with you, man, let's take them back to your journey and like what was happening, what caused your transformation, your awakening to say, I really get to take responsibility for my life and my actions.
So here's my background story. And this is going to be hard for some people to believe, but it really happened. So when I was in kindergarten, it became apparent I had pretty severe learning disability. And, you know, I remember back in the day, they used to call it special ed. I'm old, so it was like special ed, right? I got to go to special ed. And so the first day I'm going to go to special ed, my teacher calls me up in front of the class. And she says to me, you know that only stupid and retarded kids go to special ed. And I was looking at her like, are you joking? Like I was just shocked. And then when she sent me out of the classroom, she made everybody in the classroom call me stupid, right? On the way out. And of course, for the listeners, like, you know, of course I went home and told my mom that night, and she was like, you know, my mom was an undiagnosed bipolar manic depressive who didn't know how to deal with life. My dad was off doing drugs. My stepdad worked 15 hours a day. She was like, look, I don't know what to do. You're just going to have to deal with it. And so I thought, well, this is surely a one-day occurrence. And you know, I go in the next day, every single day, she would bring me in front of the class, tell me I was stupid, and then have the whole class call me stupid on the way out the door, right? And so, you know, where does that end up? You know, that ends up with a lot of beliefs about myself that, you know, may or may not be true at that point, but I got mercilessly bullied for the next few years of my life. You know, fast forward, you know, many, many years later, I'm a drug addict, you know, I'm homeless, I'm committing crimes to feed my addiction, and I end up in jail, right? And then I end up in the solitary confinement unit in jail. And I'm locked in a cell with the person, you know, pray for forgiveness. I was, you know, working out, you know, reading every book I could get my hands on. And, you know, that was my journey. And that's where I started, is like my life was a complete disaster. I mean, there's massive amounts of information in between those two things, right? But for what we're talking about is this. One day I was sitting in my cell, and I used to write these long lists of people who I felt like had harmed me, right? And so I could like pray and offer them forgiveness. And I had this massive list of people who I felt like had wronged me in my life. And I looked down at this list and I went, wait a second. The only common denominator between all these situations is me. And I'm like, wait, how can that be true? Right? It's like, you know, and I started thinking about other people's lives. I'm like, well, other people seem to have good lives. Why is my life so bad? And I thought, well, what if I'm the cause? What if I somehow created all of these experiences? And this is where the epiphany came, is that you can't create just some of your experiences. You either create all of your experiences or none of your experiences, right? I was like, well, I thought about what those two things meant, right? If I was not the creator of my experiences, it meant the world really was a terrible place and I probably didn't want to play anymore. If I was the creator of my experience, it meant a couple things. First thing it meant was that I had to be able to take responsibility for everything that ever happened to me. It also meant there was a mechanism by which you created your life. And if I discovered that I could create something new and different and great in its place, because I obviously was a powerful creator because, you know, I'd created a lot of bad things, right? So I was like, so I thought about that and I was like, well, I don't feel like committing suicide. I guess I'm the creator of my experiences, right? And even though I didn't know what it meant on that day, that was the day I took my power back because I took responsibility for everything that ever happened.
Dude, I think that's so profound. If people have not yet hit a rock bottom or they're struggling and they don't feel like they have that sense of power that you took back, I mean, granted, it was a journey that you went on. Like, what would you recommend to someone who keeps giving away their power? What does taking responsibility look like? How does someone actually do that?
So let's talk about why they don't do it. Right? There is no point in taking responsibility for your life if you don't know what to do with it, because then you're just causing yourself more suffering. Because it's like, yep, created a shitty life. That's one more thing to beat myself up about, right? And it's like, oh, yeah, that's it. It's my fault. So what's the point of taking responsibility if you don't know what it means and you don't know how to do it? And so the question is what is the creative element of my life? And that was the next question I had to ask myself. And so let's be very clear. Good things happen, bad things happen to good people, right? And so what was I taking responsibility for? Because every time I say that, people are like, are you victim shaming? I'm like, no, I'm not. Because you need to understand what I took responsibility for. And so as I looked at my life and as I looked back, I had to ask myself this question. Did the abuse that occurred in my childhood create my existence? And the answer I came up with is, if the abuse in fact created my existence, that means I'm stuck forever because I can't go back and change the abuse, right? And so it couldn't have been the abuse, because here's the other question I answered, it's like, has everybody who's ever been abused, did their life turn out bad? And the answer was no. So it couldn't have been the abuse, right? Because, given the proper intervention, my life might have turned out differently. And so what I came to was this idea. It was what I chose to believe about myself having lived through that abuse, right? And oftentimes people go, you were only 5 years old, right? Like, how could you have chosen anything differently? I'm like, stop taking my power away. Because it was in fact my choice, right? And of course I made the most reasonable choice given the circumstances. Here's a person of authority, a teacher, who's authority on who's smart and stupid, was telling me I was stupid. I was like, I'm probably stupid. That's a pretty good assessment to make from a 5-year-old's point of view. But it was still my choice. And it was the choice to believe that I was stupid, that I was not good enough, that there was something wrong with me that created my terrible life. And the exciting thing about that is I can always go back and choose differently, to choose a different result. I can't change the abuse, but I can change what I believed about myself because of that abuse. And that's the creative element, is understanding that for me, forgiveness or taking responsibility had nothing to do with the other person. It was never about letting the other person off the hook. It was about letting myself off the hook. I let the other person's actions be on them. That was their stuff. They can do it. I don't think about them. I think about the choice that I made. And that's what created my life.
Yeah. And I know there's processes in the movie that you take people through to like give them these techniques to heal themselves, to give themselves their power back, to, heal and forgive and change those like past memories too.
There is, and it took me a long time to discover those processes. And, there's kind of an interesting narrative behind that, because when I first started growing, it was like, well, let me change a belief. I don't know, how do you change a belief, right? And it's like, I know, I'll do affirmations, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll just do affirmations. So, I was thinking about, well, I don't like myself very much. Maybe I'll start telling myself I love myself. And, I was like, I love myself. And I'd hear this, liar, right? It's like,
bullshit.
I try again. I love myself, liar, love myself. Well, after a long period of time, it felt like less of a lie. And I didn't give up. And pretty soon it started to feel true. But here's what I discovered, is that essentially what I started doing through affirmations over a long period of time, I mean, we're talking years, right? From the time I got out of jail to my first $1 million was 9 years. And everybody goes, that was a very short period of time. But in reality, when you're doing affirmations for 4 of it, trying to convince yourself of a different narrative, it seems like a very long period of time, right? But what I found is this, is that if you think about your subconscious mind, right, your perception and your view of the world is based on what's in your subconscious mind. Well, of course, you don't know what's in there because it's subconscious. And so what I basically did is I piled enough good in there next to the bad that the good finally started outweighing the bad, right? And that's what started showing up in my life. So when things started changing, they started changing rapidly. But it was years of telling myself a different story, because I didn't know how to go in and get rid of the old beliefs. I didn't even know that they were there or how to identify them. It was just a matter of managing the darkness. At that point, it wasn't about getting rid of it. It was like, if I can shove more good in there than bad, then good will show up more often than bad.
Right. It's like resistance. I'm just going to keep resisting.
Right. And so I'm managing this. But the problem with that is you're just putting a lid on the bad. And at the most inconvenient time, you're at the grocery store with your kid, and your kid's starting to go crazy for a Lego or something, and you literally blow your top, and everybody in the grocery store is like, this person is crazy. Right? Because it's not like it goes away. It's still there just waiting. And it always comes out at the most inconvenient time. So after a while, and so, as the story goes, my wife and I, it's like, when we hit our first $1 million, I looked at her and said, are you happy? She goes, I'm not happy. Or she said, no. And I said, me either. And so, well, let's get to two. $2 million, right? And still not happy. And so we had to turn around and figure out what creates happiness. And so here's why we teach perception and we talk about perception. So here's what most people don't understand is that the bottom line understanding of perception is that you don't see reality. You only see an interpretation of what you think reality is based on your past experiences. So basically what we were doing through all those affirmations was changing the information that was interpreting our current experiences by shoving a lot of new information in there. Right. But creating wealth and things in the outside world and creating happiness are actually two different things. Yep. And so, one of the narratives I like to talk about is, in our book, there's a chapter, it's called like money, 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 money. Damn, it's true, which is about how money doesn't in fact buy happiness. But we didn't settle there. And there's actually a really cool statistic that supports that is that rich people kill themselves more often than poor people. And every time I say that, people go, what? It doesn't make any sense. And I think it makes perfect sense. They're like, why? And I'm like, because poor people no longer live with the illusion that money's going to make them happy. What if you pin your happiness on this thing your whole life and you finally get there and it's not there? And that's what happened to us to a certain degree. We didn't give up. And so what we found is that creating in the outside world, creating wealth and all those things is about changing your perception of what's going on outside of you. Creating happiness is changing your perception about what's going on inside of you. So even though it's not the same thing, it's two sides of the coin that we call perception. So a lot of the techniques we talk about in the book and the movie are about creating happiness. And it turns out that you can actually create both at the same time, and it's the fastest, most optimal way to do it. But that's not, nobody in society is really teaching that. It's like work harder, do all these great things, do all the things. And you're like, create money. And we've been made to choose. It's like, you got all these spiritual people that are super happy, but they're broke, right? And then you got all these rich people that are, got all the things they want, but they're unhappy. And it's like, why can't we have both? And the answer is you can't.
I love it. Personal evolution. Tell me why you said that's what we are as a company. That's what we're here to do.
So, when we started, after we sold our worldwide technology company, we started the company Powerful You as our way to give back and to teach this new philosophy around personal development. And we call it personal evolution because the next evolution of man is to take control of what's on the inside to predict what's on the outside.
Yes.
So I'll explain it to you in a really simple narrative. So, Chris, what if I told you that you've never made a bad decision? Would you believe me? Don't put your, I'm going to paint everything white, that's fuzzy. Yeah. Would you believe me? I mean, honestly.
Yeah. So bad decision, I would say, what is bad? Who says what bad is? Did my higher self?
Exactly what I told you not to do. Have you never made, right?
I've made decisions that I regretted, that I wish I wouldn't have, that, didn't produce the result that I wanted.
Okay. All right. So not only have you never made a bad decision, you're not even capable of making a bad decision, right? And so when I tell people that, they're like, what do you mean by that, James? I feel like I've made a lot of bad decisions. And what I said is that, we all start out this decision making the same way, right? It's like, at the moment we're making the decision, we evaluate all the information that's available to us, and we make the best decision we can with the information that we have available to us, right? A bad decision would be making a decision that we know is against our best interest, which we don't do. We can't even do that. That's a bad decision, right? A good decision is doing the best we can with what we have. And so you've never made a bad decision. You only ever made a decision with bad information.
Yeah.
And why is that important? Because it means that we all make decisions the same way, and that you can stop beating yourself up because there's nothing wrong with you, right? Because life comes down to decisions. Good information leads to good decisions, leads to good outcomes.
Yep.
Bad information leads to bad decisions, leads to bad outcomes, right?
Wow.
Or undesirable, let's call them undesirable outcomes, right? And so it's an information problem, period. You know, if I have something that you don't, that you want, that you haven't been able to accomplish, it's because I know something that you don't know. It's a piece of information. There's nothing wrong with you. It's only about the information that you're accessing to make your decisions. Well, where does that information come from? And where the information comes from is from two areas: your perception and your emotions. Period. That's all the information we have. And so it's impossible to make a good decision with bad information. And so we have to upgrade our source of information.
Yes.
Which where does our perception or emotions source from? It's sourced from our past. And so our past experiences are forming our current experiences. And so we have to go back and question the interpretations that we had in the past. So my 5-year-old self made an assumption based on the information that he had. That, oh, I must be dumb because here's my teacher, she's telling me I'm dumb. My mom's not telling me anything different. And then the kids are all telling me I'm dumb, so I must be dumb. And so I made the best decision I could with the information that was available to me. Right? And it's like, wait, is that right? Is that true? And the answer is no, it was never true. But I believed it was true. But that was the information that my mind sources to predict what's going to happen next, because your mind is a massive probability calculator. So when we talk about evolution, the next evolution of man is evolving the information that we source, which is literally changing the narrative inside your brain about what things mean, evolving into a higher state of awareness about yourself and everybody around you. And then it changes your life.
And that is understanding that the information and the emotions, like when we can detach from the frustration, the guilt, the blame, the beating ourselves up, would you say that's like the biggest shift that happens, the evolution that happens, is going from that to, hey, I just have wrong information and not effective emotions?
Yes. There's a couple pieces of it though.
Okay.
And so the question is, it's like, is life unfair? And the answer is, it's absolutely unfair, right? Now, does believing that life is unfair serve you? And the answer is not even a little bit. Yeah. There's no awards for the biggest victim or the person who's been through the most, right? And so it's understanding perception. And here's the basic understanding principle behind perception, is that what you feel on the inside or believe on the inside is being projected outside. And so when people think about that they see reality, they don't see reality. I want you to think about it like you're playing a video game. You're playing a video game, and the program you're interacting with is your belief system. Okay. Period. So I'm going to give you an example of what that means. We'll look at the information. Okay. So, you know, now you've seen the movie, so don't cheat here, but can you have the thing that you want most in the world sitting right in front of your face and just not see it? Yeah. Some people answer yeah. A lot of people answer no. So it's like, if the thing that you wanted most in the world was sitting 2 inches from your nose, or the opportunity to get it, would you see it? And most people they might answer yes because they know that's where I'm going, but they don't actually believe it. But I'm going to prove it to everybody. So I'm going to tell you a little story, and the story will dictate how perception works. I want you to imagine a man. This man wants more than anything to be loved. He wants to be in a relationship. Unfortunately, he's got terrible self-esteem. Just a poor image of himself. One day, this guy walks into a store, and he walks up to the counter, and the girl behind the counter starts flirting with him. My question for you is, does he recognize the girl is flirting with him?
Depends if he's open, if he has the perception, the willingness to see it.
So he's got abysmal self-esteem, low self-image of himself. Does he see it? In this case, you're saying depends.
Could be a good day. No.
The answer is probably not.
Probably not.
Right? That's what everybody answers. Probably not. Everybody's like, yeah, I knew that. I knew it wasn't. And then it was like, well, so there's a couple of interesting narratives here. So what I just established is this guy has the thing he wants most in the world sitting right in front of his face. The question is, why didn't he see it? Oh, it's because I said that he had low self-esteem. So his low self-esteem on the inside is impacting what he's seeing on the outside, right? Now, here's the question that every one of your listeners, viewers should be asking themselves. Well, if this guy has a thing that he wants most in the world sitting right in front of his face and he can't see it, what if that's happening to me? And the answer is, based on the laws of perception, it's happening to you every day. It has to happen. Why? And it's really actually pretty simple. Our movie is called Perception, Seeing is Not Believing, right? Because there's always this narrative, I'll believe it when I see it, I'll believe that when I see it. It's like, no, actually it's the other way around. You'll see it when you believe it. Because the underlying principle under perception is you can only see what you believe to be possible. You can't see anything else. And so in the example of this guy, right, he's got low self-esteem. He doesn't believe it's possible. And so everybody always answers the same to that question. It's like, no, but they don't think that's happening to them. It is happening to them, and it happens to them all the time, or they would already have the thing that they wanted because they would see the opportunities that would lead to it. I ask people this all the time. I'm like, would you like to have low would you like to have better self-esteem? And they're like, oh, absolutely. I'm like, well, what would having better self-esteem do for you? Right? And they're like, well, it would change the way I look at it. I'd be more confident. I have all these different things. I'm like, well, your self-esteem is just your opinion of yourself. Why don't you just shift your opinion of yourself? What? And it's like, it's not that easy, right? It's like, well, what do you mean shift my opinion of myself? Why don't you shift your opinion of yourself? Because you don't know what your opinion is based in, right? And so I like to tell people this. I'm like, if every time you had a really important decision to make, would you find this nearest 6-year-old and give that decision for them to make for you?
No.
Right? They're like, no, of course I wouldn't. Right? And if self-esteem has such a massive impact on your life, right, and you haven't challenged those beliefs, most experts agree your self-esteem is established by the age of 6. So that's literally what you're doing. Right? If self-esteem impacts everything that you're doing, you are literally giving the 6-year-old version of you a big part in the decision-making of how your life is going to turn out. Because you never went back and questioned the beliefs that made up those self-esteems. Just because somebody called you stupid or fat or ugly in a playground doesn't mean it's true. Right? We all walk around with this idea of the idea that our opinion of ourselves is like, it's based in this past idea. Like, why is it true? It's like people tell me all the time, well, I don't feel like I'm good enough. In comparison to what? Right? Or I don't feel like I'm pretty enough. You're married, aren't you? Well, yeah. You must be pretty enough for your husband, right? Like, or whatever it is. It's like, when is the court going to be held to determine if that's true? When are we going to go to court? It's like, Chris, you're actually not, in fact, good enough. Turns out you were right, right? It's like, in comparison to what, right? I'm not smart enough. Well, brain cells can grow, then becomes for what? Like, you're smart enough for everything you're doing currently. And we have all these beliefs and narratives that we run in our head, and it's like, why would you even believe that's true? And so evolving is about changing those ideas. When you change those ideas, then everything changes.
I love it. I love it. I saw in the book, the topic is being like the hero's journey. And I saw like there was a lot in that, like diagrams and charts and, like cycles of repetition and things like that. Like, tell me more about the matrix and how you use like this hero's journey to empower and shift people's identities and their life.
So I call it the new hero's journey, right? Because the hero's journey used to be something very different in the past, but what the new hero's journey is this. And I want you to imagine, you're a child,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're going through life and you're in what I call Neverland, right? It's the world of children where everything's innocent, everything's good. Neverland can last up to a couple of years to a couple of decades,
Mm.
right? But at some point, based on the level of trauma in your childhood, that bubble bursts, right? And you suffer a massive rejection. And from that point forward, you fall into the matrix, the world that feels very forced on you, right? And you're trying to figure it out because it's like, oh, well, what's going on here? Like, why am I not good enough? All of a sudden you have these thoughts, these feelings, these beliefs of doubt, about who you are and that you're separate and that you're alone and you're fighting for your survival and nobody cares about you. And then it's like, once you're there, you can drop to any level. I mean, you can drop to a level where it's just like, yeah, this is bearable, or you can drop to rock bottom where it's completely unbearable. But once you're there, you have the choice to just accept it as your new reality.
Mm-hmm.
Life isn't what I thought it was, right? It can't be fun, right? I'm here alone. I'm fighting for my survival. Or you have the option to try to climb out, right? Or you can exit through addiction or suicide. And so, we call that the new hero's journey, right? In the sense of that's what we're all fighting. And so there's a lot of evolutionary principles that go into this idea. And what it comes down to for us is really fear. So it's, do you understand what your biggest fear is? What do you think?
Do I? I don't think so. I mean, it might be something that has hit me multiple times, but do I grasp it? Do I really engage with it, saying this is my biggest fear, and every day I'm going to be aware of it. I'm going to go to war with it. I'm going to heal from it. I don't have that level of awareness or consciousness.
All right, so let's talk about what everybody has the same biggest fear, and it's actually death. Believe it or not, but not death. There's actually 3 forms of death that we fear, right? We fear potential death, which is when we existed in tribes, right? What happened is that we wouldn't go from one valley to the next unless we ran out of food, which means the fear of dying was more from staying than going.
Right.
And that's what all the neuroscientists talk about, the fear of uncertainty. So it's a fear of potential death. The second form of fear that we fear, the second form of death that we fear is the fear of instant death. We won't do things that'll kill us, right? Like we don't touch hot wires, we don't jump off cliffs, we don't run into traffic. But fortunately enough for us as a species, we've mapped that out, and there's fences and warning signs and everything. So it's not a huge concern for us anymore. I mean, it's a little concern, car accidents and things like that. But there is one form of death that's the most scary, and it's ugly death, right? And so when you think about it, it's like, what's ugly death? And people say it all the time. I don't mind dying. I just don't want to suffer.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I just don't want to suffer. Yeah. And that's ugly death. Well, there is an evolutionary equivalent to ugly death. And there is a primal program that kicks this fear off inside of you. So I want you to examine for a second. Think about, when we existed in tribes. There was one thing that would happen that would equate to ugly death. And it was being rejected from the tribe. It takes 8 guys with a stick to fight off a bear. No way around it. You cannot survive on your own. So if the tribe rejects you, right, you are now going to die in a very short period of time, and it's going to be ugly because you're probably going to be eaten, right? And it's like, I'm going to die. Now, in that circumstance, there's only 2 ways to live, right? The first one is you can either gain acceptance from the other people of the tribe, and they let you back in, and then you live, right? Or you can kill the pack leader and become the leader and gain control. And so I want everybody listening to the sound of my voice to realize very quickly, acceptance and control is the narrative that's playing out all over the planet. We're all trying, that's why we have this belief of we're not good enough. Who are we not good enough for? The tribe. Well, why? Because we've been rejected. And so what we've discovered through our work is that when you suffer your first massive rejection, that it literally kicks off a primal program inside of you. And the primal program says, either get accepted or take control, or you're going to die. And so we don't even know this program's running around, but we're all running around trying to prove ourselves. We don't feel good enough for what, right? Because that's no longer a part of our lives, but the program is still running, and that's what causes every war, every disruption. Because here's what you got to realize is that when you were a child, you didn't feel separate from your parents, right? You felt like you were part of the we. Well, in the old tribes, they didn't even have a word for I, because there was no survival. They only had words for we, because it was only the pack. And so when you suffer your first major rejection in your life, you now become an I, and whatever I am is not good enough, right? And this causes all kinds of chaos type things. It's like, what's the ego, right? It is that point that you spin up an ego and you go, well, if I'm not good enough, I better come something different. And your ego goes, well, I got you. Spins up a persona and says, well, how about this? Is good enough? Well, that's not good enough either, right? And it keeps spinning up personas so that the most authentic, real version of us is now buried under 1,000 personas, because the only thing we know is whatever we are is not good enough, so we need to become something different. So we're literally running full speed ahead, full speed away from the most authentic version of you. And so I've got this narrative, and the narrative is, what if you're everything that you think that you're not, and nothing that you think that you are? And I can prove that's the most likely scenario.
I'd be like, hallelujah. This is James, you're an angel.
Right, but we can actually prove it really quickly. You want to try an experiment?
Let's do it.
All right. So I would welcome anybody who's watching us today to go along with us, right? I want everybody to close your eyes. You can close your eyes too. Okay? And I want you to think of something that makes you mad. I don't care, your neighbor's dog poops in your yard, you got caught in traffic, anything, social injustice, it doesn't matter. Anything that makes you mad, anything that irritates you. It's going to shake your head when you have it up, Chris.
I got it.
Where in your body is that showing up?
Just my gut and my head.
Okay. So I want you to feel into the pain in your gut. Okay. I want you to allow yourself to really feel that anger in your gut and in your head. I want you to feel the feeling. It's not a thinking thing. This is a feeling thing. And when you feel the pain in your gut, there's an early childhood memory attached to that pain, and it'll just pop into your mind when you feel the pain. Don't think about it. Tell me when you have that memory.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, so open your eyes for a second. And I would welcome everybody else to open their eyes. Is it a memory you're comfortable in sharing?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the memory?
My sister got something when I was younger that I didn't get, and I was angry because she like was favored, or at least I thought she was, over me. Okay,
so let me ask you another question. What was the thing you were angry about?
The feeling I was angry about? Yeah. The feeling I was angry about is my sadness. Like I wanted this. I felt disappointed.
No. When I started the meditation, I said, bring up something you're angry about. What's the current thing you're angry about?
So I smelled, like we used to have a roommate, and there was like a dog that peed on the carpet, and the floor still smells, and I tried to clean it up, and it's been a pain in the ass to get out.
Right. So I want you to recognize, first of all, that those two things have nothing to do with each other, correct?
Right.
Why did one bring up the other?
Because it's the same feeling of anger, same emotion.
So it's actually not. So basically what happens is that there was a situation in your life that introduced fear into your life. Mm-hmm. And from that point forward, that fear touched every experience you've ever had. Mm. So the reason, and this is so oftentimes, it can be like, I was sexually abused, I was this, I was that, I was this, I was that. But the truth is, the vast majority of times when I take people back to that moment, it's always the first rejection. Mm. In that moment, you felt like your parents favored your sister over you, right? Yeah. And in that moment, you thought, whatever I am is not good enough because they like my sister better. She's better than me, right? And that introduced fear into your life. Mm. And that fear. So I used to go on these giant witch hunts for the, like, I'm going to get to the core fear, right? Situation. And I was like, after I've done hundreds of these processes, I've just walked you through, and we're not done. But after a long time, what I discovered is that any anger is tied to that first second. It doesn't matter. It always goes back. You know, I was talking to a guy the other day, and he massive, addiction, a lot of trauma in his life. And the memory that came up when we did that was he wasn't invited to a Nerf gun fight.
Wow.
And he goes, "Are you telling me that all of the trauma in my life was because I wasn't invited to a Nerf gun fight?" I'm like, "Nope, you're telling me that." Right? It was because he was the only kid in the neighborhood who wasn't invited. Right? And it was his best friend's house.
Wow.
And he didn't know why. And so when your parents in your mind favored you over your sister, you are now separate from your parents, which you'd never considered before. Whatever you are is not good enough. And that was the introduction to fear in your life. And I'll challenge you to think back before that time. Life was happy and blissful, right?
Yeah.
Like everything was great. Like, but after that time, things probably got a little bit more challenging and a little bit more challenging and a little bit more challenging. And the reason is because it was at that point you decided that you were separate, that you were different, that you were not good enough. That's when the first bit of fear crept in, and it grew over time. Now, if it had been a more traumatic situation like mine or my wife's, where she was sexually abused, then it comes on much faster, right? And so here's the other side. What's the lie? You know what the lie is?
What?
The lie is survival. I can come over to your house. I can take away all your stuff. I can kick you outside. I can take away all your money. Are you going to survive?
Yes. And
so there is a survival program that's running inside of us, but survival is no longer on the table. So that's what's causing all of our fear. And our fear is causing all of our emotional disruption. That's why it was tied together. It didn't matter what it was. It always goes back to that first spot. And so the lie is fear, actually. Because it's like, if there's nothing you have to do in order to survive, right. I mean, there's people in LA have been homeless 50 years, right? They survive.
Yep.
Then what can you do? Well, you can do whatever you want to do. But the problem is that we're all running around fighting for our survival, and survival wasn't even at stake anymore. And it's like, that's what causes every war, every disruption. It's like, that's what causes the me versus you mentality. Even though we don't exist in packs anymore, we're still 100% dependent on each other for survival. We just don't realize it because we go to the grocery store, right? And so it's like, we didn't need to be a part of the pack to survive anymore. We could live our entire life with minimal contact, and survive just fine, right? And so it's not on the table, but that's the program. That's why everybody doesn't feel good enough. Good enough for who? Good enough for what? And it's like we're fighting for something that's not even on the table anymore.
Wow. James, this is powerful, man. And I know our audience, people are wondering, okay, so now that I see there might be this wound, there's awareness now that the fear has been running the show, the fear of survival, when it's not even true. Like, we're going to survive whether we're rejected or not. Like, what do they do now with this information? How can they take their power back? How can they live a different life knowing that?
Okay, well, we're going to give them an example by using you.
All right.
All right, so close your eyes again.
Okay.
And here's what's really important, is that you really feel the emotion. I want you to feel that anger in your stomach. I want you to go back to that situation when your parents gave your sister something they didn't, that they favored her, that she was smarter than you, right? And I want you to find that younger version of you, right, in your mind. I want you to see you sitting somewhere. It can be on a bed, it can be on a rock, it doesn't matter. Like, just see yourself sitting somewhere, contemplating this idea of what it means, why they like her more, why they love her more, why why is she better than you? And I want you to go sit down next to yourself. And here's what I would like you to whisper in your ear. I would like you to tell the younger version of you that it's okay, and that he is good enough. And what just happened had nothing to do with him, right? And I want you to tell him that you have an amazing life now, and that you're an amazing human being. And the only reason you have that life is because of his strength, because he fought to get you here. But you can also tell him that life doesn't need to be a fight anymore. that everything's okay. And I want you to honor and thank him for standing up that fear of I'm not good enough, because you use that fear to fuel you to here, but you no longer need it. Then I want you to feel the fear of not being good enough, and I want you to let it burn inside of you. And then I want you to honor and thank that fear for the protection it offered you when you were younger. And I want you to recognize in this moment that you no longer need that fear. And I want you to choose to release that fear. But you can only release it through fully feeling it, allowing yourself to dive into that idea of I'm not good enough, like they like him, like her better, and feel it and understand that you now have the mental and physical capacity to handle the situation and to see it differently. And I want you to breathe deeply as that fear releases and just keep telling yourself, I release this. Now, the fear might have something to say on the way out the door. You can say, well, do you have something to say? And it might say, well, you're stupid because you need me. And just say thank you. Right? And just say, I choose to release you anyway. And you can ask it a few times. Is there something you have to say? And if whatever it says, just say thank you, but I still choose to release you. And then just allow it to completely dissipate until the feeling in your stomach goes completely away. Okay, there's a couple things. I can tell that it's releasing. Feeling good, right? Okay, a couple things I want you to notice. You notice how much deeper you're breathing right now? Also, do you hear the white noise in your head? It's scary loud, right? It's weird. Okay, so I'm going to want you to do one more thing before you open your eyes. I want you to go back to that younger version of you. And I want you to tell your younger version one more thing. Is there something that you love right now in your life?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what it is. I want you to think about the thing that you love. And I want you to feel that feeling of the thing you love in your heart right now. I want you to feel it, what it feels like to love that thing. And I want you to go back to the younger version of yourself. And here's what I want you to tell you. I want you to tell that younger version of yourself that it's okay. That life has been no fun without him, and that it's safe to come home. And that you have the capability to protect him, and he doesn't have to be worried or scared anymore. And I want you to put him right in your heart, right next to that thing you love. I want you to let that love in your heart grow until it's a bonfire. And I want you to merge with that version of you and understand that you're safe, that your survival is never at stake, and that you can live a life of joy, fun, and experience all the goodness and love that life has to offer. Now the white noise is really loud. You feel that feeling in your heart? Whenever you're ready, you can just come back into the room. So for the listeners out there, that's what we call the emotional integration technique. And here's what you need to understand about emotions in order to do this technique. The first thing you need to understand is that your emotions are not about other people, so stop making them about other people. Their emotions are not about you. And so we are constantly saying, you made me feel this way. Your emotions aren't there to tell you that there's something wrong on the outside. They're there to tell you that something is wrong on the inside. So I want you to understand that your emotions are your window into your subconscious mind, number one, okay? So number two is that, we have a tendency to project our emotions, make them about other people, right? And that's not what you want to do. You want to understand that your emotion is about you, and stop taking on their emotions, stop making their emotions about me. They're mad, they must hate me. And so when you understand that, the next thing you know to understand is that emotions are stored in the body, not the mind. And so that's why when you're anxious, you feel it in your stomach or different things, is that every emotion that you've stored in your body is causing disruption in your system. And those emotions essentially are stuck there because you didn't process them when you were younger, because you adopted that fear to protect you. But now what once served you no longer serves you, right? And so it's now that you can go back, and when you get angry or sad or upset, I usually write it down because it's always in the middle of the day, and then I go back home and I sit down and I bring up that emotion. I identify where it's at in my body. It can be anywhere: your shoulders, your neck, your head, your third eye, your your back, your legs, your arms. It's like, so that's, find out where it is, feel the pain. The pain has a memory attached to it. find the identifying memory, allow yourself to feel the emotion that you repressed, and release it through love and gratitude. And so essentially what's happening is that what you did was you went into your past, to a past situation, and you imprinted a new emotion on a past situation, which was love and gratitude, by honoring not only the fear that you adopted, but the younger version of yourself that did it. And acknowledging that they were only doing the best they can, and allowing everything to be good in the moment now. And so as it releases, you'll hear that white noise and you'll feel very calm, but you kind of just scrape the dishes out of the sink. As you get angry, basically it's kind of like going back and defragging your computer. It's like you're getting all of that emotional garbage out of there, you're processing it all. So the next time your mind grabs that memory to predict what's going to happen next, it comes with a different emotional response. And that's how you create happiness.
This is so freaking powerful, man. I love it. I feel so good, like just so light, just going in and excavating. We all need that experience consistently, right? Because just do it once. If someone's doing it on the other side of this, you did it, like congratulations. If you didn't do it, listen to this again, go freaking do it. And it's like an ongoing thing, because there's lots of stored, stuck, repressed stuff that life confronts us with, and then we get to be responsible to go back and heal it, man.
I do that every single day.
Wow.
Every morning, that's my meditation. Wow. Did you also notice how deep you were into it?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, why, the rumor has it that the Buddha only ever taught body meditation, right? Because he understood that, the body is a subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And that's where the oppressed emotions live. And so when you go into your body, you get drawn into a meditation. You had no idea you could get to that level that quickly, right? It's like, wow, I'm in this deep place. You release the emotions. Like, the one thing I would let you guys know is that just know that emotion doesn't want to go anywhere. That fear, you think about it. I like to think about it as like guards that I stand up all my life. I stood up this guard, and the guard stays standing in the place. It's like every once in a while somebody trips over it, and it comes out and it unleashes some massive toxic attack on them. Like, it's like, oh, yeah. And then you stuff it back down. Yeah. Well, instead, what you have to understand is that we're constantly demonizing fear. But what we need to understand about fear is fear's only job was only ever to protect you. Yeah. And so you got to stop demonizing fear. And we deal with fear with honor, gratitude, and love for the protection it offered us. But we recognize that we no longer need that protection when you release it. And so on the way out the door, the fear is going to scream, and it's going to burn, and it's going to say things. And it's like, that's why I always give it the option to say something. Sometimes I name the fear, right? Like, you have something to say, like, you're making a big mistake. Like, you need me. Like, I mean, I've had it like curse at me, and I'm just like,
I had some F-bombs going on.
right. And it's all you say is, thank you. And then you just, but I still choose to release you because you know something they don't know, which is they've been standing there waiting for acknowledgement. And that fear is just like, well, it's, it's a guard. You got to release the guard off duty because it'll just stay there standing until you process it.
Man, James, we've only scratched the surface, man. I know our audience wants to know how they can stay connected with you. How can they learn more? How can they get the documentary? Tell them more about that, man.
So here's what's really cool is that we are actually offering the documentary for free.
Dude.
For the month of February.
Damn.
So you can go to our website, powerful-u.com. And, about, a little bit down the page, there's a watch the movie for free for the month of February. Just click on the button. And then if you go download our app, which is just go to your app store on any device, your Apple TV, Google TV, Android, and put in powerful the letter U. Okay. And there's an app called the Powerful Universe, which is our content engine. And in that app right now, the movie's screening for free as well, and you can watch it on any device. And that's only available to the month of February. And your users are the first ones to hear it publicly, except for a couple of people I told on Instagram.
First official interview announcement.
Right, I didn't announce it on the Powerful Use page. My phone is small, so I just announced it to a few people. But you guys actually have the first opportunity to see the movie for free. And just so you know, is that this movie just won Best Picture at the LA Film Festival. Best documentary at the LA Film Festival, and best documentary at the Hollywood Film Festival. So not only is it a transformational piece, but it also, when you watched it, it's a it grabs you.
It's intense. It's intense. I was like, no.
There's some really cool people in the movie as well,
dude.
And so you can buy our book. So the book and movie are both called Perception, Seeing is Not Believing.
Okay.
You know, the book is available on Amazon. It's available. It'll hit Audible in a couple weeks. Yeah. It's available on Barnes and Noble. It's also available on our website, but the movie can only be seen on our website or in our app. So that's available to people.
Dude, James, man, thank you so much. And everyone listening, go see the movie, Perception, Seeing is Not Believing. Go check out the app, Powerful You, Powerful Universe Content Engine. This is gold, man. This is awesome. Definitely connect with James. James, thank you so much for being here, man. You're doing beautiful, empowering, enlightening, activating, evolving work in the world. It's awesome, man.
Well, you know, I'm gonna give you a compliment as well, because not only was this a great interview, thank you for interacting with the content before we got on, so we had an interesting conversation. But the other side of it is that you really took that process to heart, and I could tell through your experience that you really want to change and grow. And it wasn't like yeah, whatever. Like you did it, right? And to all your listeners out there, that's the hardest part, right? It's just doing that little thing. Yeah. And when you string together a bunch of little things, your life can be told. You can have anything that you want. Yeah. Happiness, love, joy, things, big houses, cars, whatever you want. Right? But you have to understand how to evolve your perception, take control of your emotions, and you know, our book and our movie is a guidebook to how to live life. So.
Yeah. Boom. I love it, man. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day, okay?
You too.